Hello, EdTech Team Online. We're here today with another Hangout on Air. Just remember during this Hangout, if you have questions, you can either write them, tweet them out, and make sure you use the hashtag EdTech Team Online so we can get back to you. Or you can also ask them if you're in the live feed, you can go ahead and ask them through the question feature in YouTube. And I'm gonna pass it over to Dominique so she can take it away and introduce our guest for today. Thanks, Dominique.
Hey guys, it's great to be back with everyone this week. I'm excited about our guest we have for visual literacy. Today we're going to be talking with a friend, Rushton Hurley. He's a former high school teacher of the Japanese language. He's a former principal, and he also runs the educational nonprofit Next Vista. He's also the new author of the book, Making Your School Something Special. So it's super fun having Rushton with us here today. We were just at an event last week in Peru with a lot of teachers there, and so it was a lot of fun. Rushton, we're so excited. Thank you for joining us today to share your expertise on visual literacy.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys very much. If you'd like, I can just kind of leap into presentation and then we can take any questions that might come up. Or
that'd be perfect.
All right, so I'll get into that cool moment where it's sort of in the, can I choose the right window to
While you're choosing that window, as Tracy mentioned, please make sure as you are listening today to the live broadcast or watching it later, to please tweet out what you're learning using the hashtag EdTechTeamOnline.
All right, so you guys should be looking at a slide with some candles.
Yes.
Rock and roll. So this is my my quick little presentation on visual literacy and cool learning. I want that second half of that to kind of be a focus for us today, because I think there are a lot of different things that we can do when we think about visual literacy, and I want to get us in a place where it is something of kind of immediate practical interest. So we'll kind of leap into that as we go. My second slide, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on this because this this clearly is not going to be the most exciting slide in the deck. But for those who are really interested in kind of core issues of visual literacy, I've got a trio. I picked out a trio of links that I thought would be interesting. In particular, that first one is an Edutopia post that is great for introducing people to the idea of visual literacy. In some ways, you can really boil down visual literacy to this idea. Visual literacy refers to the ability to critically evaluate, use, and create visual information. And so while we can talk about this kind of thing, what kind of visuals do what kinds of things in terms of learning, how do we understand that that a visual does not represent a certain kind of proof, instead it generates new kinds of questions. Instead of doing that core piece of visual literacy, I want us to get into a space where we can make sure that our teachers and students are engaged in activities related to what is cool about visual literacy. So so you'll get these slides at the end, and we'll get a link to everybody for these, and so you can follow those to your heart's content for the detailed pieces. But with that, I move on. Woo, there we go. So so I want to start with this image right here, right? And I want you to imagine that you are starting class, and so bing, the bell rings. And you look at the students, and there's a couple of ways you could start it. Let's say you were going to start by reviewing from the last class. So you could say, all right, everybody, I need you to settle down. This is very important. I want to review what we did in the last class. There's only kind of so much excitement there. And it sends some messages that I think are not all that positive, such as, you don't really need to remember what we did in the last class because I will tell you at the beginning of the next class. I don't think that's what we want to pass along. And so as we're talking to our teams, our teaching teams, we want to get them to start classes strong, right? So how do you do it in a more intriguing way? Well, so you take maybe a picture like this. You say, okay, guys, here we go. Class has started. Take a look. Got an image on the screen. I want you to get in pairs and tell me, how does this relate to what we studied in the last class? Now, I like this as a review tool, in part because it may mean that the kids are looking at each other and going, hey, what did we do in the last? What was that? So instead of you just telling them, there might be this thing of, okay, well, let's see. What did we do? Oh, we did this. Okay, yeah. And does that relate to cars or aliens burying cars, or what might it be? So having that kind of opportunity to say, well, what is it that this visual can do, can incorporate elements of visual literacy in kind of the realm of, why is this picture, set the way it is? Why are the angles such that they are? What do I learn from the people that I see in it, and where was it posted? So there's all these kind of interesting visual literacy questions, but hopefully it's also made for a much more engaging experience in terms of learning. What is this? There's my credit for this one. This is actually a photo I took at an EdTech team gig in the Texas Panhandle last summer. It's a place called Cadillac Ranch, and you can Google image it and find lots of pictures like this, and they're just not boring. You can imagine. Look at it. Here's another picture, and another way that we can talk about what visuals can do in class. How do we get our students to begin engaging with visuals in really interesting ways, and to think about the issues that may be a part of what one is experiencing visually. So, for example, maybe you've got your class going. At a certain point, you stop and say, "Okay, guys, got this on the screen, right? Take a look. Here's what I want you to tell me. Tell me at least 3 stories. Give me at least 3 stories of what this might be." And then set people to work. So, like, if we were in a session right now, that's something I'd do. I'd say, "All right, you guys, in groups, do it. At your tables, come up with at least 3 stories as to what this might be." And people start coming up with all kinds of ideas. Oh, okay, well, these are people escaping, like a battle that's going on the other side, or it's a group of fraternity people, having a time. They just come up with all sorts of ideas. But the variety is an important piece, and it's an important piece for a couple of reasons. First, the second part of the question is, what might this be? And that's a very different question than what is it? And one of the problems we have in terms of really effective learning is that we ask kind of bad questions all the time, and wonder why we are perpetuating certain modes in the classroom. So what is it is actually kind of a bad question in this sense. Anytime a teacher asks a question that boils down to do you know the right answer? Typically what happens is that the room will defer to the 3 or 4 kids who always get the right answer. And that's not what we're shooting for. Our goal is not to validate the living daylights out of 3 or 4 kids while everybody else watches. Our goal is to have students begin to believe in their ability to come up with ideas, and for you to really learn how they think as a result of seeing those things. The first part of the question was come up with at least 3 stories as to what this might be. All right, so at least 3 stories. Now, with that, we're working with creativity research, because if you said, well, what might this be? There might be kind of this standard response that people come up with based on some obvious component of the visual. But if you say, give me at least 3, every answer you come up with, every possibility that you come up with, is going to get more and more out there as a result of having to be more and more creative, coming up with something that hasn't come up before. Now, that's interesting. Every single creativity researcher I have read says, look, creativity is not something you either have or don't have. Creativity is something that you develop. And so we have to give our students room to develop their ability to be creative about their thinking. And so I think using visuals in this way can be particularly powerful. Now, here's the credit for this. And you might kind of understand immediately why I showed it without the credit first, right? It might be that knowing that this is Varanasi, the Ganges River and things, there's just kind of too much information to be as creative as one might be. So having something like this, creates these kind of opportunities for connection. I was showing this to a group of students in an EL class, an English language class, fairly recently, and the other teacher in the room kind of got all excited. Says, "Oh, that's the Ganges River. That's probably a cremation going over there on the side, and blah blah blah." And she told this full story about her experience over there. Well, when we start telling stories, we capture attention in a way that, look, this is important, doesn't, right? So it's something powerful for us to be in that space where we say, okay, what is it we can do? What is it we can do that really allows students to say, well, what's going on right now? What is that? What is it that we can be excited about with it? So I am a big fan of a related idea. The related idea being digital citizenship. This is different than visual literacy, but the two clearly have some overlap. And specifically, we want to be using digital media, and in particular images, but could be all kinds of things, songs or writings or video. And we want to be able to use things that we are legally able to use. So that can include all sorts of things. But from this page, search.creativecommons.org, we end up with this tool that allows us to find things that are Creative Commons licensed. I'm going to take just a moment to explain that because I think it gets us back to visual literacy in some interesting ways. So Creative Commons licensing is essentially some rights reserved, right? So if copyright is all rights reserved, Creative Commons is some rights reserved. And there's several flavors of it. The first one is by, as in, so you have to cite your source, and every Creative Commons license has this. Whatever it is that you're about to use, make sure you tell who did it and where you got it, right? So provide an attribution. There are some other pieces as well. So someone might have said, yeah, it's free, go ahead, just make sure to cite your source, but don't use it for commercial purposes. And that's the NC bit. Sometimes it's share alike. You can't change the particular kind of license, or you can't change it with the no derivatives. So there's a couple of different pieces of that. There's plenty more to explore through the Creative Commons site, but it's worth kind of having some sense of that. Now, when you think about the idea of doing image searches in front of students, the first thing I'd say is just don't, right? Just never do an image search in front of students, because you could be searching on something, kind of totally normal, and boom, there's kind of like, whoa, what is that picture right there? And that kind of changes the dynamic of the class very quickly. However, that said, I do think that one of the opportunities we lose as educators with being a little bit more flexible about what people can search for is that if they run across something like, let's just say they did a search on Brazilian culture and they end up with Brazilian festivals, and it's like, wow, that woman isn't wearing very much, or whatever it might be. And at that point, there can be this discussion. Okay, shut that window down. Hey, I didn't mean to go to it. I'm sorry. No, not a worry. Just go ahead and close the window. Do you know why I asked you to do so? Oh, well, that's against the rules. Do you know why it's against the rules? And you might actually get out of a kid, no. Or maybe just a curiosity of what you're going to say. And being able to say, well, here's the thing, that woman that was in that picture, she's somebody's daughter. And the way she was in that picture suggests that she's more of an object than a person. And we're going to hold ourselves to higher standards in our class. And there's nobody we're going to treat as an object. And kids need to hear this from people, right? When we think about visual literacy, we're really talking about the power of visuals and the power that they have to get us to point to things that are issues of honor. And so I think it's just a big deal that we get into this space where we talk about visuals in all kinds of ways. So one tool that I have, the link at the bottom of the slide, will take you to a Google slide presentation where it actually prompts you to copy it first. So you do, and then it's in your drive. And I call it the 2-slide presentation. And what it is the first slide is in one image, a Creative Commons licensed image with a citation like you see in the upper left right there, title, person, site, and the CC license, which is a little bit more complex, but still. And the title I've linked to the original picture. Now, the second slide is why you chose that picture, right? So that's the idea, right? All there is to this particular assignment, the 2-slide presentation, is you choose one image, you cite it, you make sure that it's one you can legally use because it's Creative Commons licensed, and then you tell why. Why do we have such a thing? Well, because if you have larger projects where kids are supposed to be citing their sources, they may just not bother to do it, right? Because it's kind of a pain. And there's so many different things going on with a lot of these projects that they're kind of happy to ignore it. And a teacher might say something, might not. Maybe the teacher would say, "Well, you didn't cite your sources. I told you to do so. So that's 4 points off." And the kid's sitting there thinking, 4 points out of 100, happy to pay 4 points for not having to deal with that hassle. And if what we do is we boil it down to one image, one citation, and why, then you can't really ignore that. So I could talk in much more detail about this kind of thing. But part of what we're doing is getting kids to stop and say, well, what am I seeing and why? What is it that intrigues me about it? What is it that I think is there? What is it that might be a story that is told as a part of this visual? And so getting them practicing this can be done in all sorts of ways. 2-slide presentation could be used at the beginning of the school year so that the students are essentially telling each other a little bit about themselves, right? Choose an image that relates to something that's important to you and tell why. Just cite your source this way, and so they do it. Anyway, so you've got that template. You can use it if you like. And as you take it further and you begin to do things like videos, now we're in a space where we're trying to understand what is it that we really learn from looking at all kinds of different material online. So teachers, students, we're all kind of swimming in this digital media ocean now. And this particular video, which you can watch if you wish by clicking on the breathing system in the upper left, is a stop motion video about the breathing system. It was done by some students in South Africa. Clever piece. And sometimes what we do as teachers is we say, okay, we're going to do video projects, and I want you to watch this video because this is a great example. Well, what we really need to do is get them watch a whole bunch of examples to see what they might find. So, if you think in terms of video projects and you're really trying to pull quality out of the kids, what do you do? First of all, I do a lot of workshops on how to tell your stories of your learning, how those stories can become ways of describing successes in your school, all of this kind of thing. But it really boils down to certain things, which is getting the kids' creative juices flowing about how they're going to tell their stories. So I have several sets of videos here that come from my website, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a second. But if you give students, say, 100 different videos and say, look, pick 3 or 4, and for each one, just talk about what you see as strong, what you see as kind of weak, and how you would have approached it differently. And that last piece is the real kind of creative exercise element to it. But we want them to be getting lots and lots of ideas. We want them to act on those ideas in interesting ways. And so by taking a look at the variety that's out there, they can move in good directions there. So this is my little charity, by the way, or at least the videos page of my little charity called Next Vista for Learning. It's an online library of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere, free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from, all for a student audience, all screened content. It's my own little attempt to save the world from ignorance, one creative video at a time. Thank you very much. And so we got about 2,000 videos on the site from students and teachers all over the world. And it's all for a student audience, right? So, there's a lot here that they could look through just to see, like, do I want to try making something like that? Or, maybe that helps me learn something. So I could talk ad nauseum about that, but I won't. So a friend recently posted this picture to Instagram. And I'm not linking specifically to where I got it because it kind of just gets to that point where it's too easy to identify, like the place. But contacted him and asked if it would be okay for me to use this image. He said it was fine. So you look at this girl. Look what's on her shirt, right? The girl's going to change the world. And he wrote in the Instagram post, "What if every student believed that he or she could change the world?" Which is that's a great way of looking at the world, right? And you look at the kid's face, and you're confident that she believes it. That this can really happen. That when we see that people do believe these things, it's not just teachers throwing out platitudes. You can change the world. But I mean, it's people their age stopping and saying, "Wow, like, yeah, we can." That's when it starts to move the heart. And I think the heart, in many ways, is the key piece of what we're talking about with visual literacy. There's all kinds of things we do to plop things into students' minds in the hope that what we help them, begin to think up can become action in some fashion. But I think people act on ideas as a function of their heart telling them that it matters. So a good example for me is this story. So this organization, the Memory Project, was founded by a guy named Ben Shoemaker, and he went down to Central America to work in an orphanage, and discovered what everybody who works in an orphanage discovers, which is that the kids have no personal history. So they're not walking around with baby pictures of their own or anything like that, right? So he spends a few weeks down there, and he comes back to the U.S. I think he's in Wisconsin, and this really weighs on his heart. And he decides, I think I can do something. And he creates this organization and connects with orphanages in different parts of the world. And his contact at the orphanage will send a digital picture of every child. He moves those pictures to high school art programs in North America. High school artists then paint portraits of the children, which come back to his organization, which go back to the orphanages. And this is a picture of a girl receiving her first portrait. And, if that smile doesn't sing to you, I don't know what would, right? I mean, it's one of those things where visuals allow us to begin to understand the world and understand the possibilities that we have in the world in some wonderful, wonderful ways. So my goal is to use all kinds of digital media and collaborative tools like all of the Google stuff and good ideas that we share among teachers and leaders around the world to just make our schools better, to make our teaching better. And so this is a book that I just wrote and that EdTech Team Press has published. And the idea is to help teachers understand what can make for really powerfully memorable learning. What kinds of ways that are out there to foster and share the successes of your school, and to build individual confidence for both students and teachers. And so it's a book I hope you'll take a look at. The link can take you to the EdTech Team Press page. You give that a look and see what you think. So this is my last slide, and Tracy and Dominique, we can get maybe that link at the bottom there, tinyurl.com, to folks so that they'll have all of these available to them. The rest of it, you're welcome to email me if you watch this and you have ideas and questions. I answer every email I get eventually. Then there's the video library at nextvista.org. I'm on Twitter at @RushtonH. I was a little late to Instagram, so I'm @RushtonWasTaken. Get it? Anyway, resources, that's a bunch of free resources that are out there that you might want to share with your teams. And then I have a newsletter that I send out every month telling about different projects and contests we run and new videos we've posted to the site, and tons and tons and tons of freebies. Stuff to read, stuff to watch, stuff to try. Just because, not everybody has time to go exploring for this, that, and the other, and to have somebody do it for you, not so bad a thing. And I finish the newsletter the same way every month, and I'll finish the formal part of the presentation before we do any Q&A with the same line now, and that is this: may you inspire and be inspired each and every day. And there you go.
Wow, thanks so much, Rushton. I love seeing all those resources and just hearing your heart too with telling stories and telling other people's stories as well.
Yeah, when one of the things that's so magical about the, this will sound like blowing smoke, but what EdTech Team has created is this ability to get people into that space of, I think I want to learn some more. And so they get into a setting where people are sharing ideas and are getting excited about learning new things. And they begin to open up and they begin to tell stories about what they do and what they hope to do and what they'd like to do better, which gets us into a place where we begin to say, I can get better. That's not obvious. A lot of teachers are kind of in a space where they think, I'm not a great teacher, but I try, as if you can't become a great teacher, right? And I think all of us who are school leaders in some way need to be people who are doing everything we can to get our teachers to believe in their own possibilities to do great things in the classroom. So same, when you mentioned Peru earlier, right? I mean, how incredible was it to talk with these teachers from all different places in the country, like these high-end international schools, kind of public schools from all parts of the country, sharing ideas. Mm-hmm. And once we start down that road, we just get a lot better at what we do, and a lot of kids benefit from that for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Very, very true. Rushton, I know that you had shared a little bit about the Creative Commons finding video or images there.
Yeah.
What other advice do you have if you are going to have either students or teachers searching for images?
So so understanding the distinction, I think, related to what's kosher and when. So, for example, a savvy teacher in the United States may know that you can use copyrighted stuff in the classroom just fine. Under fair use provisions of copyright law, you're allowed to do that as long as it's for educational purposes. Cool. But one of the things we're trying to do is to get teachers, to get kids to create things that go online, right? That leave the boundaries of the classroom and the campus. Because once the audience changes, their thinking about their quality changes. And this to me is one of the most important pieces of the power of visuals. And I usually put it this way in my talking, and it's this. When students know that others will see their work, they want it to be good. But when it's just for the teacher, they want it to be good enough. And that orientation to quality is important. They're capable of doing far better than we often think. And when we get in that space where we see what they're doing, because hey, everybody's going to watch the videos you make, or we're going to share these with our partner class over in Lima or Cairo or wherever. Suddenly they're thinking about what they're doing changes, which means that they begin to push themselves, which means they begin to understand that they're capable of more, which means they begin to see themselves as something other than one of those kids who watches when the 3 or 4 kids who always get the right answer give the right answer. Right. That's where I feel like we're trying to go with. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I also just think too, like when we're trying to use some of those images to spark that interest or that creativity at the beginning, or to get them thinking a different way, instead of just saying like, oh, yesterday we learned this. So where else can people find those images?
Okay, so that particular page that I showed, the search.creativecommons.org page, points to a number of different tools, right? So by starting there, it's like going to any of those sites and going to the advanced search and asking for just images or that have these particular licensing. It kind of solves the longer kind of hassle of that. And there are 2 that I recommend more than any others. As you might have noticed, the stuff that is not my own, almost all of it came from Flickr. And the reason that I like Flickr so much is that, unlike Google Images, any given image is likely to have a high resolution version that's available to you. And if you're doing any kind of digital media stuff, then you want high res versions, because if you've ever seen a kid take a thumbnail and stretch it out onto a slide, oh, the twitch will go away, right? So you just don't want to be part of that. And so Flickr does, and of course Flickr's huge. There's billions. I mean, there's something like 8 figures worth of images that have been uploaded to Flickr. It's some frightening amount. Approximately 15% or so is Creative Commons licensed, and as more people kind of understand what that is, they begin to upload their pictures that way, et cetera, et cetera. The other one that I quite like is Wikimedia Commons. All of the pictures on Wikipedia come from Wikimedia Commons, and those images are particularly rich in terms of historical stuff, because there's a lot of Wikipedia material about this piece of history or that piece of history, which is itself like a great kind of digital fact-checking kind of exploration possibility there, right? But if you're looking for pictures of New York from the 1920s or something, like, it's kind of hard to do a lot better than Wikimedia Commons. You want to have something where it's like, I'm not going to have to hassle with, oh wait, that's copyrighted. And you can, of course, go when you find something you really want to use that's copyrighted, you can contact the author or the photographer or the videographer or whoever it is and ask for permission. If they give you permission, that's fine. I find that, like, it's 1 time in 20 that they'll even answer you. So just stopping and saying, okay, well, that's a really amazing image. Can I find something similar? Search via digital similar images. Can I have somebody draw something similar for me? Done by my buddy Phil. Okay, great. Whatever it might be. But if you're using your own content, then clearly you've handled everything. If you are, by the way, cite yourself, right? All images in this presentation were done by yours truly. Ding, right? This kind of thing. So we want people to be thinking in terms of, this is something I can use because the person who did it said it's okay. And that basic educational piece of, do I know which ideas are mine and which ideas are somebody else's? And am I treating other people's ideas as mine? No, 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 right? We have to say, no, that was this other person's idea. And here was my idea building off of it. Little activities like the 2-slide presentation can be really good for getting people in that frame of mind.
And Rushton, you mentioned when creating your own content, which I know you are an avid photographer. Do you have any tips for when people are, whether they're encouraging their students to take pictures or whether the teachers themselves are taking pictures? What kind of tips would you have for creating excellent images, I guess?
So if you look at my Instagram feed, instagram.com/Rushton was taken, all right, you might get the impression that I know what I'm doing. That would be wrong, I think, because there are helpful things out there, right? HDR, which is something a lot of people don't know that much about, but it's called high dynamic resolution or high dynamic range. And the idea is to take multiple pictures at multiple exposures of the same picture. So that if in one shot, the sky is all nice and blue, but everything in the foreground is dark. And in the second shot, you can see this stuff just fine, but the sky's all washed out. The idea is that HDR means that you're taking the best of both and pulling them together. So you can get these kind of vibrant pictures using HDR tools. And somewhere on most smartphones in the camera is a, here, click, do it at HDR. And a lot of people are like, oh, I never knew what that was. Try it and see what it does. Then there are tools like Snapseed, which is an image editing tool for phones, mobile devices, that it makes hacks like me look like we're good photographers, and I'm a little blown away by the thought that you would introduce me to somebody who's an avid photographer. I feel like I pretend, but yeah, the one of the great things, again coming back to visual literacy, is okay. You take a picture and then you take it into Snapseed, and you adjust like the saturation or the brightness or the ambiance or whatever, right? You put some filter on it. Is that a different picture? Really? Right? What do we learn from this image? And what story changes as a result of having worked with the image? Can you bring something out that wasn't quite there before? That's an interesting process. Mm-hmm. And so actually, this is one more thing that teachers can embrace, right? Say, hey, take some pictures on your phone and mess with them using a free app like Snapseed and see what you can come up with. One other thing I'd add is that it's good for teachers to know that when they're doing digital media stuff, digital images and digital video, you don't have to be on camera, right? Kids don't have to take pictures themselves. They like to, but they don't have to. They can take pictures of stuff, where it's just like the hand pointing to things, right? And those can make for some great, cool pictures. Just be creative with it. And that kind of gets us back to that. Look at what other people have done, so that you're not just thinking, oh, this is what I'm being asked to do. Teachers get that question. Things like, is this what you want? And as a teacher, you're like, don't ask me that, right? What I want is for you to be an interesting person who takes pride in your work. That kind of thing. So if we can get them into a space where they're like, oh wow, there's some really cool ideas that come from this video over here or these images over here. Now we're talking. We want them to essentially be proud of what they've done, and like I said, changing the audience can be awfully good in that regard.
Yeah. No, you've given us some great things to think about as we get started with this visual literacy portion of the course. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
So one other thing I gotta toss in there, because we got a bunch of leaders out there, right? Yeah. You're either a leader or you're gonna be a leader, or you are and you don't know it, or whatever. So one of the things about being an education leader is this: the more you can get visual evidence of what's happening at your school, the more you can tell the stories of what makes that school special and what makes it distinctive. And you want to be thinking along those lines, right? Every teacher should have in his or her head some activity during the year that would be the activity he or she would describe if somebody said, tell me what's cool about your school. Well, in my class, we, blah, 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 blah. There should be at least one of those. And so by thinking as a leader about how we bring the visuals of that happening, that's why I'm so impressed by people who, as a teacher, will put stuff online that show the visuals of what's happening, like that picture of the girl, like, this girl's going to change the world. I'm like, I'm much more optimistic about the future now, So that's where the power of visuals, visual literacy, can kind of move into that space of, how do we lead schools well? So I just had to add that. Thank you for the interruption, sir.
No, I love that, and I think that's so important. So Tracy, I don't know if there's anything else before we close up.
There aren't right now, but Rushton, hopefully if people do tweet out later when they're watching, you can answer any questions that they have. I think that people have tons of great information to start off this unit on visual literacy. So we really appreciate you coming on.
And if you see that someone's asked a question and I don't seem to be getting to it, I'm a little old school in that I do an awful lot via email. And so if you see it and I'm not getting to it, shoot me a quick note. I'm happy to answer anything for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great time in the next couple of weeks learning about visual literacy. Thanks again, Rushton.